So how's the Comic-Con been so far for all of you?
It's I can't believe it's only day 2.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, it's been incredibly awesome. Really,
Yeah, very
really
good
wonderfully
show.
awesome. We had a big panel yesterday with the release and all the information on Mutant Mayhem, which is absolutely fantastic. And I was disappointed they didn't do a showcase on just my 3 lines. I have, I have three lines in the movie, but they didn't. No, but the movie's fantastic. The team is great, and so the fans went nuts. So it was a wonderful way to kick off the con.
I love it. Yeah, all you guys feel the same way. Just a lot
Yeah,
of fun.
it's been awesome. Been bouncing around to the NECA booth, signing Last Ronin figures, and then going over to IDW and signing the con exclusive Lost Day that we did. And so it's just been like everywhere. And they also have my drawings blown up like enormously, and so it's really cool to see. Yeah,
I love that.
It's just kind of wandering around the show floor, seeing so much turtle merchandise, but seeing so much now that's representative of what we've done over the years. You know, it's just a very diverse line of figures and toys, and it's exciting to see that. And there's things I hadn't seen till this weekend, and I was like, wow, that's great. This is really exciting to kind of be part of that.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, I mean, next step, big news, the Last Ronin sequel.
Yep.
Tell me about that. Tell me about it.
Well, this is how it ends. No,
It's all a dream.
well, one of the fantastic things and the most challenging things for Tom and I was when we started adapting, when we set out to adapt this 20-page idea that Pete and I had back in 1987 into what would become all things Last Ronin Universe, there was no intention at all for a sequel of any kind, even though the idea of having new turtles evolved very quickly because we fell in love with the Roninverse. But then when we finished, then we didn't know how it would sell, and then it sold pretty well.
Yeah, I like to think so. We've been excited about the response. Yeah, and like Kevin said, I think I worked with Kevin for many years on the ongoing series side by side, but this was really where I became the Robin and he became the Batman with the storytelling in it. There's a reason Kevin Eastman is Kevin Eastman, and I got to witness it. No, it was fascinating. It was exciting, and if anything, just his gut instincts on small ideas and big ideas and little things like, hey, why don't we throw 4 little turtles in a terrarium at the end and just see how people react and talk about genius, right? And I thought, okay, that'll be cool, nice little Easter egg, and it's just one more thing that has expanded this universe in ways I would have never expected. I'm happy for it, but it's certainly something that I think Kevin has a kind of foresight that is fascinating to me, and not just story-wise, but just Kevin is one with his fans, and he says they're going to react to this, and they did.
Well, that's, just following up on that, I was so thrilled to be Robin, his Batman, on the ongoing series. He's one of those few artists, writers in our industry that's written 100 issues in a row. He wrote literally, for 11 years, wrote 100 issues of the Turtles, and they're all brilliant. And but it was just great watching the ideas evolve and spending this time mind melding and creating this very unique TMNT IDW universe, because Tom, what I love the most about Tom is that we think the same, is that it's story first. It's got to be a great story, and it's got to please us because we write for ourselves, and then hopefully it will translate. So that was when Tom jumped off the series in issue 100 and we jumped into all things Last Ronin. That was just a real hoot because we get to shift gears and try something different and really blow it out creatively.
I love that. And for Ben specifically, how did it feel to kind of craft your own TMNT with these new additions? And from there, from an artistic standpoint, first we'll start with that. How did it feel just to create your own TMNT?
It was crazy. I mean, everything just kept getting better in my life. Kevin was like, hey, I need you on Last Run. And I was like, what? And, hey, you're going to kill all the turtles. I was like, okay. And then the same day that I found out I was having a daughter, I was on the phone with Kevin and telling him that. And he was like, well, I actually want you to design the new turtles. And I was like, what the hell? And then I found out we had action figures. And I was like, okay. So I started drawing like really quick. Like, Kevin had some sketches, and again, he piled on all these reference photos of different species of turtles, because basically the agenda was to make them as different looking as possible, completely recognizable individually, even in their silhouettes and sizes, and then later personalities, of course. But I ended up drawing 12 different designs, the teenagers, but also the baby versions of each, which are really cool to see, like what could have been. These are like the TMNT rejects or something. And they made their ways around, and everybody picked their 4, and it just so happened like most of us were overlapping in our favorite ones, and so we knew we really had something. And and just in general, I'm also like, you know, so grateful, and just seeing the response from the fan base is because you never know with like new stuff and like a long-standing IP like the Turtles or something like that, like if they're gonna accept it or hate it. And it seems like a lot of people are down to see what happens next with these guys in Ronin 2.
Ben definitely killed it in design, and the fan reaction has been wonderful. It's been really great.
Well, I'm going to call out something specifically that just actually came out this week. Was we did a book called the Lost Day Special, which was part of our kind of our ancillary series in between Lost Years, and as excited as I was about what Ben did on Last Ronin, I think Lost Day is some fantastic work, and I even think you, Judah, we tend to think a little longer sometimes, and so schedules get interesting, and so that kind of happened with this series, you know, and not as to the extreme of Last Ronin, but it was running behind. So Kevin and I, you know, asked Ben, you might have to go a little quicker to help us out. And if anything, what Ben did, it seemed like you kind of changed your inking style up, and I said, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I've heard that from other people, which is really cool, because all the while, you know, you're like stressing out, like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. I can't wait till it's over. And I ended up drawing my pages more at size. And so something happened with the lines, something happened with the speed of having to do that and just like cut out all the fluff. And I really do think it's some of my best stuff, which is really cool, because it's a nice finale for Lost Years, going right into Ronin 2.
Yeah, it's a good warm up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Already.
Here we go.
Ready. And it's so cool because we see them kind of come into their own in the Lost Years, and so moving forward, what's in store for these guys, like going into the sequel?
Well, I think that's the fun stuff that you know, and I think Tom's just a wonderful like lyricist, I think, of the dialogue, and now it's, you know, so we have pretty good ideas of what their personalities are, but now until you actually start moving them through and have them interact and react to different scenarios and different scenes that we've written, that's when you really start getting the feel for these characters. So that's going to be fun. Yeah,
it's going to sound cliche and maybe corny, but this kind of answer I tend to give about the writing process is, I believe. There's a movie Heat. This is my and there's the computer guy that gives the schematics to Robert De Niro to go rob the bank, and he says, "Where do you get all this? You could build a bank with it." And he said, "It's just out there, man. It's out there, and you got to know how to grab it." And I said, I think that's the same for everything, including writing. It's already out there, and we just happen to be, you know, this is my thing. There's a radar I have, and we can channel it. I always say my dad's a carpenter. He can see a piece of wood and turn it into a table. I would burn it, because I wouldn't know what to do with it. And so it's one of those things that I just feel like all this stuff is there, it exists, and that's what I think adds to the success, and is that it feels realistic, because to me it does feel real when it comes through, and like Kevin said, it's an evolving process. That's one of the things we're almost the seat of our pants writing sometimes, because we feel like, wait, that's not, we thought we were going to go here, but it's going to go here, and we have to follow them and let them lead us, and it's always a fun ride, and it's nice to do something, and it's a surprise, even though you're the one that plotted it.
For sure. And so going off of that, let's kind of go off the wall a little bit. So in TMNT, you know, we see Armagon. And he is new. He is biting through timelines, time streams. Worlds are exploding behind him. This feels like the prep for a multiverse story. I could be way off, but is there potential for the new Turtles in the Last Ronin verse kind of meeting the original Turtles from this ongoing continuity, maybe even including Saturday morning adventures, because it seems like Shredder's getting this sword that can cut through, you know, reality itself. Could it all converge? Like, is this some huge thing, or is that just totally?
No, we're talking about at IDW, you know, as far as on the ongoing side, there is a multiverse that we're building, and I'll give full credit to Sophie Campbell for that. So Sophie's been kind of the brainchild as far as bringing Armagon in and kind of expanding the universe. But we've played with dimensions, multi-dimensions before. So even in Armageddon game, which is one that I worked on, we had 3 dimensions: Dimension Z, Dimension X, and then obviously the Turtles dimension. But you know, I think we're telling the story now that maybe 10 years ago might not have been as easy to tell, because I don't think, you know, general fans, I think super nerds understood multi-dimensions and multiverses, but I think that like the Marvel movies and the DC movies have done a good job of kind of training, I guess what you would call normies or the normal fans, what a multiverse is. You know, so they can understand that a Ronin can exist at the same time that Cowabunga dude in Saturday Morning Adventures, you know, Mikey, can exist. You know, it's just all part of the bigger reality. So I would say, I'm not saying there's any specific plans for that, but I do know, generally speaking, the multiverse is something that we're really excited about. And, you know, and again, it's a fluid process. Sophie says, I want to bring an Armagon, I got these ideas, and we just go with it. And I'll give you an example of how those kind of things can work, where things change. I had no plan in Armageddon game I didn't even know what a Kujikiri was. That was Sophie one day said, hey, I got this idea for the Turtles to do this training, and it's called Kujikiri, and this is what they're going to do. And that's when I said, wait a minute, what? Okay, I'm going to change what I'm doing in future issues because this works so well, you know, better than what I had planned. You know, so it's always a collaborative process, you know, and we always have a lot of fun with it. And I think that is my favorite thing about working on Turtles, and I say working, it's more fun than anything, is that Turtles is about family, but behind the scenes, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
You know, I think it's just to sum up, too, that one of the greatest things about working with Tom and the team with Sophie, and we all work together, is everybody checks their egos at the door. So it's, you know, if somebody has a good idea, you know, for the, you know, all that's holy, recognize it and embrace it and use it because it's so much fun. So it's a great team.
From each other.
I love it. Something I've also always been curious about since The Last Ronin, is that a completely new timeline, or is that something like the future of the original, like Mirage Studios TMNT? Is that what it eventually leads into?
It's, you know, as Tom touched on, you know, we grew up, you know, Marvel, DC, a lot of comics have had these multiverses. Even I always felt with the Turtles, with Pete and I, that we had the cartoon universe, we had the original black and white universe, and then to me the movies sort of met sometimes in the middle of both those. And so we had these, you know, these multiverses. But with Last Ronin, we had the approach that, you know, every beginning must have an end. So we went back to what Pete and I originally saw in the way we approached it in 1987 was we had issue 1, and this would be the final Turtle story. And so we leaned closer to that Mirage universe, but we also wanted to make it consciously kind of a Dark Knight approach in that it was not of any universe, but a new universe within itself. It wasn't the IDW universe, it wasn't the Mirage universe, but so it's that's how we started, and it sort of grew along the way from there. And so it's a very unique timeline, and we're actually probably curious to see where it's going to take us as well.
Yep.
Well, I'm so excited to find out with you. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thanks so much.
Cheers. Cowabunga!
Yeah.